What's going on, everyone? Welcome to my devlog for Ryan Laley's Summer Games Jam 2023. So for the past 15 years, I've been passionate about game development, and I've been working on projects on and off, but I never actually managed to finish or publish anything. Recently, I spent some time off of work due to an injury, and I started programming and dabbling into game dev again. Except this time, I feel more committed to this journey, and I want to use the skills that I've learned from the military so I can stay disciplined and more committed for this process. So I figured if I really want to solidify my decision, I'm going to be participating in a game jam. So enter Ryan Laley here on YouTube. I've been following Ryan for a while now, and when I heard that he was going to host a game jam, I knew that this was the one for me. So I cleared up my schedule and eagerly awaited the game jam theme announcement.
So the theme of this year's Summer Games Jam is based upon a craze that's been happening in the cinema world, and that is Barbie Oppenheimer, and this contrast of two opposite films. And inspired by that, the theme is contrast.
Contrast. While it's an awesome theme, my first question was, what can I make to match the theme that isn't too large and overwhelming for a one-man team? But there was no time to waste. So I immediately opened Unreal Engine, and that really was my first mistake because I ended up staring at a blank canvas without a single thought about contrast. Looking back, I should have grabbed a pen and paper and brainstormed some ideas. Just jot down anything and everything that came to mind about contrast, really, and then pick something that would be manageable to finish. After a few minutes of pondering on what to do, I thought about contrast, and the age-old comparison came up between light and shadow, which then built up to the idea of a secondary world that overlaps with the regular world but isn't always visible. For simplicity, I called it the shadow world, and I was happy with the core concept. I just had a simple idea that matched the theme, so now all I had to do was create it. And then figuring out how to create it after some thinking, I figured the easiest way to achieve the effect I was going for was to create a material that I could apply on the post-processing volume in Unreal Engine, and then I can create some sliders and variables that update whenever I call a function within the game, as in like an ability for the player, so that he would then transition from the light world into the shadow world, and then vice versa. So after about 2 hours of playing around with it and working on it, I managed to get a good transitioning effect done. Boom, done deal, best game ever, game jam over.
This is the best game ever!
Not really. All I really had was, I matched the theme, but what I needed now was an actual game to play, so what to do from here.
All assets that you are using, you must own the rights to use, so it could be anything you've purchased from the marketplace, something you made yourself, could be whatever you like.
This will be a massive time saver, as now I don't have to actually sit there and create all of the 3D assets or 2D assets, sound design, or any of this other stuff that would take a lot of time. I got a small collection together, so now it's just hard to figure out which ones to choose. After looking through the library that I have, I found a few great assets that would fit together, and I started having a core idea for a game. So I want to make a third-person action-adventure platformer in which the player explores a temple that has several hidden artifacts within. Those artifacts would then be guarded by traps and be hidden behind locked doors, as well as some can only be seen from the light world, some can only be found in the shadow world, so I can really integrate the transitioning effect for the contrast. So I created the doors and lock mechanisms that required keystones to unlock, and added the transitioning effect onto them as well, so that I can set them to be visible from only the shadow world, only the light world, or maybe even from both worlds. So to really give some dynamic gameplay and fun experience for the player. Once I had the doors done, I started working on the traps. I loved playing the Prince of Persia games growing up and felt nostalgic for a moment thinking about the traps. And I knew I wanted to use traps like that in my game because I think they would have fit perfectly into it. So after some modeling and some programming, everything started to come together real nicely. I then started programming some optimization into it because so far the transitioning effect was relying heavily on the tick function, which in Unreal Engine, the tick function, if you don't know, it is called every frame the game is running. And every single object I had in the game was pretty much using that because everything was interconnected for the transitioning effect. So I felt like it was very taxing on the computer or the gaming system, and I wanted to work around trying to make it run more smoothly so that whenever you call the transition effect, it would only happen once instead of fire continuously throughout the game. But I didn't notice until I was doing the final testing before releasing it for the game jam that this brought a bunch of bugs with it. So I will touch more on that later. I started finishing up the level design because time was running out with all the programming. I had to finally get going to actually make a complete level. It started off nicely, but eventually I started feeling frustrated with it just because it took forever to place each individual asset and blueprint and object and actor into the world where I wanted it. So eventually I just copied and pasted things around and then moved them just slightly just to make it not look identical, which in my opinion is a big no-no for level design, but for time purposes, it was the fastest way to go about things. So then after the level was fully designed, I then again did some test runs and I found several bugs with the transition effect. Some traps weren't showing after the player died and respawned, and then some pedestals weren't showing in the wrong world. Some statues were not showing how they were supposed to. So after roughly another 3 hours of experimenting with what was wrong and running out of time to really pinpoint the issue, I ended up putting the tick function back into it, which surprisingly fixed all of the issues that I apparently created myself. Yeah, if in the future I pick this project up again to build on it some more because it was fun, it seems like a fun experience, I will definitely rework the transitioning effect so it's not running the tick function, but so it's also not so bugged as it is right now. I hope you enjoyed a small glance behind the scenes of this little project, and if you're interested in playing it, check it out on itch.io. I will have a link for it in the description. And if you just want to see what the game is in its entirety, there's a playthrough video on my channel as well. So feel free to check it out. And if you want to see what else I'll be doing in the future, feel free to like, subscribe, the typical YouTube stuff, right? Anyways, until next time.